Right. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Cabinet meeting of Melton Borough Council. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio-visual system this afternoon, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. The Monitoring Officer, Assistant Director for Housing and Communities and Leisure, Culture and People Manager are joining the meeting remotely. There is a quick reference card placed on the desk in front of you, which provides instruction on how to use the basic speaking function on the microphone. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak and to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please, could I request you switch mobile phones to silent? I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the side of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. So we move on to what I call the meat of the meeting now. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have Councillor Ronnie de Burl. I don't believe there are any others at all. Moving on to agenda item 2, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December 2021. I'm very happy to move there. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Graham seconds that. Any amendments from any members? Thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. I look around. I do have my usual one. Perhaps if I could have Democratic Service to have this as recorded as a rolling item, my interest as personal interest as a Leicestershire County Council, any matter that relates to the county. Item 4, matters referred from Scrutiny Committee in accordance with the Scrutiny Procedure Rules. I don't believe there are any. So we move on to item 5. The Lifeline Business Development Plan, and I turn to the Director for Housing and Communities to summarise the report, please. So over to you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. So Lifeline services support residents to remain safely and independently at home. We have a number of customers who currently pay to receive this service. Currently, there are 3 separate Lifeline offers delivered by the council, which does lead to confusion at times and a lack of clarity of our offer to customers in Melton. Those offers are a private Lifeline service, a Time Sage Lifeline service, and one linked to our properties through hardwired units. The equipment used to deliver the service needs to be upgraded and digitally enabled as part of a national transition to digital equipment, which will mean the equipment we currently use will become obsolete in the next couple of years. The council currently works in partnership with Harbour District Council, who manage the associated control centre, who receive the calls that come from customers in need. But what's clear is that the council needed to take an opportunity to review those contractual arrangements to achieve greater value for money and efficiency in the way that we work. Currently, we have around 240 private Lifeline customers, plus over 500 customers with hardwired units within their Melton Borough Council properties. This particular report this evening focuses on what's called phase 1 of a wider review of Lifeline services. During the next year, the council intends to take a full review of its approach to providing assistive technology, recognising that assistive technology has really moved on across the country, with a view to looking at the viability of establishing a single, customer-focused and commercially viable offer across Melton, irrespective of tenure. In the meantime, though, it is necessary to take some initial action to ensure that the current service is effective, delivers an immediate saving, and is ready to be digitally enabled. Those efficiencies, as the report says, can be best facilitated through the partnership that we have with Harborough District Council, and members are asked to note that in the budget proposals that members will receive later this year, there are proposals to include a capital allocation to enable that transition to digital equipment. And that will help us to be ready for the digital switchover that we're expecting. So what this report does is it seeks Cabinet approval to progress the first stage actions as set out in the report and to enter into that revised partnership arrangement with Harborough District Council for the continued provision of private lifeline services. The report also seeks Cabinet approval to commence a full review with a view to establishing a single customer-focused service across Melton, irrespective of tenure, which we've referred to in the report as stage 2. And I want to be clear that that stage 2 review will need to be really comprehensive, really inclusive, and I'm really pleased to say that the Council Scrutiny Committee has included it on its work programme. A number of changes and improvements have already been made to the service, but the proposals in front of you this evening are to help us to continue on that journey. I will draw members' attention to the reference in the report to the matter of historic debt assurance, also to members that the processes in place now mean that we are able to receive the monies due for the services that people receive, and that we will have a separate programme of work to address historic debt across the council. So a really positive part of the journey for Lifeline Services. Look forward to taking any questions, and I shall hand over to the portfolio holder. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michelle. Yes, certainly I'll hand over to Malise, portfolio holder for people and communities, to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thank you, Michelle, for summing up incredibly well. This paper has been brought to Cabinet to bring our offer of Lifeline up to date and to set out a plan for the longer term review. I believe that Lifeline is a vital service that our council offers our most vulnerable residents. The new technology has an important role to play in supporting people to remain safely at home. It has so many benefits, as it helps to keep people independent, can also reduce the pressure on hospitals and social care. With digital technology coming in to so many of the things that we offer, Lifeline is no different. As we move towards a digital solution in the future, this has many advantages, not least that in many cases, the apparatus can be delivered by post and installed remotely rather than being manually fitted, which frees up our team to support our customers. It must, though, be an efficient and cost-effective service. And this is what this paper explains so clearly is our aim. As the paper says, part 1 is to build on our existing constructive relationship with Harborough District Council, who manages the control centre that receives calls for assistance from our customers. Part 2 commits us to the longer term Lifeline offer for our residents, because it will enable us to develop the most effective solution for the future for people all across Melton. It would allow us to consider what that offer could look like, irrespective of whether you are a private rented tenant, a homeowner, or a social housing tenant. There are, of course, a number of considerations, questions, and interdependencies that will need to form part of this wider review. It is therefore so important that all members, especially those with experience of the system, are able to contribute to this wider review, and I will ensure that this happens. This paper gets the ball rolling, and I have much pleasure in moving. And do you want me to read the recommendations or move the recommendations you have in front of us?
Just move the recommendations. No need to read them out there.
2.1 to 2.4 in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and also Malise. Very detailed introductions. I really don't have anything to add other than I'm very happy to second 2122, 2324. Does anyone have any comment? Wish to make any comments? Okay, thank you very much. So we move to the vote on the recommendation. All those in favour, please raise their hands. I think that looks like a unanimous vote. Marcus, if you can note that, please. Thank you very much, members. Moving on to item 6, tenant and leaseholder engagement framework. So I turn to the Director for Housing and Communities to summarise the report, please.
Thank you. So really pleased to present the tenant and leaseholder engagement framework this evening. This report presents the next phase of a framework and a plan for meaningful tenant engagement in Melton. It does build on the many years of excellent work, including advocacy for residents and holding us to account as a landlord, led by a number of tenant engagement groups in Melton. I think what's really important to say at the outset is that tenant engagement is not a nice to do, it's not a nice to have, it's a really important part of what we do as a landlord. It's really important that we can be held to account, that we work with our residents to improve our services, and that we take this seriously. The views, the voice and the feedback from residents should be embedded into all that we do as a landlord, and done in the right way, it will ensure that we can focus on continuous improvements, which will always be our focus as a landlord. Good landlords, as the report says, engage in a really open, inclusive and meaningful way with residents and create a range of opportunities for people to share their views. And that includes giving people opportunities to raise concerns if things are not working and to hold us to account to make changes. I know that the portfolio holder for housing has said in a previous cabinet meeting the importance of our complaints process, and people having that opportunity and feeling able to complain to us is important. And I would want to reiterate that again this evening. Tenant engagement, as you'll know, is not new, but its significance and profile has really increased since the introduction of the government's white paper, the Charter for Social Housing Residents. The Charter sets out 7 core values, which I won't read out, but are listed on page 18 of your report. Engaging with our tenants obviously forms a really key part of that. As a council, Melton does have a history of engaging positively with tenants, but there is work to do, and there is a need to refresh and refocus this important area of our work. We will do this in line with the proposed tenant and leaseholder engagement framework, and it sets out a proposed approach for the next 5 years with a detailed delivery plan to be developed. I'd like to draw members' attention to some considerations set out on page 19 of the report, which really sets the context for why now is a really important and opportune time to be doing this work, not least the introduction of the Charter for Social Housing Residents and the regulations that will follow, but the fact that actually we enter a new era as a council for making improvements in our housing journey. As part of the new approach, a programme of service improvement groups, which are on a thematic basis and link directly to where we've heard from residents that we need to make some changes included. So these include repairs and maintenance, communication and neighbourhood management. We'll also be engaging with our residents directly as we continue to develop our HRA business plan. I understand there's some focus groups due to take place this week as part of that. One of the things that we're really aware of, it's important that we give Cabinet an ongoing awareness of the progress we make in relation to this, and the things that we learn along the way as well. So it is proposed that we would bring an annual update to Cabinet on the progress made. There are a number of next steps set out on page 22 of the report, but subject to your approval tonight, we've got a team ready to start to work really proactively with our residents to make sure that we can really take tenant engagement to the next level within Melton. Really happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I now hand over to Councillor Brown, portfolio holder for Council Homes and Landlord Services, to move the recommendation and provide any other information.
Yeah, Leader, yeah, happy to move the recommendation. But before we get to the formalities, just a few things I would like to say is that really this is a reset of our tenant engagement offer to our tenants. And as we have discussed in cabinet briefings and in other meetings in the council, I want it to be really properly meaningful, where we actually listen to our tenants and we don't fall foul of mistakes made like there has been in the Grenville disaster, etc. And we might think that we're little old Melton up in the Shire, but things can easily go wrong in little places as it can in big places. So that's the first thing. The second thing is recognising the tenant engagement that has occurred in this authority since 1999. Bob Scarborough was the first chair of the tenants group. I was lucky enough to work with Bob for probably about 15 years, something like that. And then that was taken over by John Skert. I know years later we want to say a few words on that, so I'll leave you to that. But we do have to recognise that. But in latter years, we're taking our eye off the ball and other pressures in this authority and other authorities, including government, who have some culpability in allowing the voice of tenants to dissipate and fall away. We are now in a situation where the voice of tenants is becoming much more important across the country. And the Charter for Social Tenants is one way of doing that. And we will have noticed that last week that Michael Gove has actually said he wants to move it forward more quickly, how we actually engage with our tenants, and especially our building safety bill that the government's going to roll out. And he's bringing that forward to March, I believe. And that's really where we need to be really engaging meaningfully with our tenants, listening to the concerns that they have, listening to the ideas that they have, and actually meaningfully working across the council with our tenants. And that includes not only staff but elected members, and we have a role there to actually be meaningfully listening to people on the ground and taking those back to officers and having those robust discussions around how we can move things forward in a collective and meaningful way. So really just ending it there without going on for too long, I would then therefore, Leader, just like to reiterate that I would like to move 2.1, please, which is to approve the tenant and leaseholder engagement framework, and to say finally that this is just the start of a new journey for the council in relation to tenant engagement.
Yes, thank you very much, Ronan. And I'm very happy to second 2.1. I'm glad, Michelle, you mentioned on page 22, 8.1, the next steps. All positive stuff, isn't it? We've moved so far on this one. We've done well. I'm proud of the council. Well, on how we're moving. Any other comments from members at all? If not, I ask you to raise your hand if you're in favour of the recommendation 2.1. I think that's unanimous. Democratic Services, if that could be recorded, please. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, the draft housing allocation policy. So again, I turn to Director for Housing and Community to summarise the report, please.
Thank you. So this report seeks approval from Cabinet to enter a consultation phase to seek feedback from stakeholders, residents and current housing waiting list applicants on a proposed new housing allocations policy. The plan then would be there's a further report detailing the outcome of the consultation, a full equalities impact assessment, final policy and timeline for implementation to be considered by Cabinet in March. Subject to your approval this evening, consultation will begin tomorrow and will be for a period of 6 weeks. Just to give members some background on the housing allocations policy. So councils are required to have a mechanism in place to assess housing need, to advertise available social housing, and importantly, to allocate properties to households who are in need. This is known as a housing allocation scheme. That then determines who can join the housing register, the level of priority that would be awarded based on each applicant's circumstances, and it provides us with a really robust and transparent framework to determine eligibility and prioritisation of those applications, recognising that social housing really is a scarce resource and we need to make sure that we allocate in line with need. Making changes to the housing allocation scheme does require a period of reasonable consultation. The council currently operates a housing allocation scheme that was last updated in 2014. It requires a full review because it hasn't been updated in the context of local housing need as we stand right now, current partnership arrangements, and has not taken into account in the current drafting of the legislative changes that have taken place since it was last reviewed. All of those things have been addressed through the redrafted policy for consideration, and a copy is provided at Appendix A of your report. As part of reasonable consultation, the council is legally required to consult with other housing providers operating within the borough, but it's also really important that we seek views and feedback from other partners, stakeholders, residents and current housing register applicants. The feedback will enable us to make any amendments required to the policy ahead of a final version being considered by yourselves in March, and it will also help us to make sure we really robustly complete an equalities impact assessment. If it's okay, Chair, I'd like to just hand over to Alison Bennett as our Assistant Director just to give a very brief overview of the key changes within the draft policy.
That's fine by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me and see me okay? That's great. So yes, to talk about the main changes that we're bringing about, as Michelle pointed out, we do need to be compliant with the Homeless Reduction Act, and we've been able to fit that into the bands that are contained within the allocations policy. Also, when we're reviewing an allocations policy, it gives us an ideal opportunity to look to better balance the number of people we have on the waiting list with the number of properties that become available each year. At the moment, we've probably got about 608 people on the register, and we get about 150 and 200 properties a year. So we need to bring those two variables into better alignment, because if we have people on the housing list, to me, they really must have a realistic prospect of being rehoused, and also, along with colleagues who want to be working with people, to actively support them in their application. So by slightly reducing the number of people on the waiting list, we're far better able to match supply and demand. One of the ways that we can do this is to look at the local connection criteria. So at the moment, to be eligible, you need to have lived in the borough for either 6 out of the last 12 months or 3 out of the last 5 years. The proposal is that we just move that to 2 years residency within the borough. Another element which is very important is those people who don't live in the borough, but who work in the borough, and we do want to continue to assist those people. And the proposal here is that someone would need to have worked in the borough for the last 2 years. The last change to this part is that we would ask, oh, have you lost me? Oh my goodness, so sorry.
Can still
Sorry.
hear you, Ali. We still hear you.
I'm trying to. Sorry about that. The last part is that we're going to remove the element for people to move into the borough who have a local connection through through having a relative in the borough. Though obviously, if that need is because they need to either give or receive support, then there would still be grounds for those applicants to be eligible. So that's quite a bit of the changes. We've also taken the opportunity here as well to look at how we can incentivise certain groups of people who are on our waiting list. And one of those groups is our armed forces personnel. And this sits with the Armed Forces Government and a requirement for local authorities to look to assist people to access accommodation. And what we're proposing here is that our armed forces applicants do not need to have a local connection to the borough. They do need to have a housing need, but if they are eligible, we will give them a further 9 months waiting time priority just to assist with their application. One of the other changes is that we currently have 4 bands on the waiting list, and the 4th band is for people who do not have an actual housing need but who have a wish to move. So for example, someone who's currently housed in a Melton Borough Council property but would like to move but to a property of a similar size and who isn't having any problems. My concern around having this group of applicants is that it's very unlikely that we'll ever be able to offer them a property. And I think it would be far better that we removed those applicants, but gave advice and assistance to them on other housing options. Within that band, however, there is also those applicants who are only interested in older persons accommodation. And I propose to keep those applicants, but to put them onto band 3, because we have a much greater supply of older persons applicants. And I don't want there to be any issues when we're looking to fill our properties when they become void. So those really are the main changes that we've got put forward in the policy. And just to finish off by talking a little bit around the next steps. So obviously this is all about seeking approval to launch a consultation exercise, and Michelle has very kindly outlined all the groups that we'll be consulting with. In addition, members will shortly be receiving an invitation to come to a briefing session which I'll be holding to go through these issues in much more detail. So the whole policy will be available on the council's website for people to read, but it is, as members will appreciate, around over 60 pages. So what I've also done is I've put together 12 key questions which relate to those key points that I've just spoken to you about, so that we can focus responses and look to make the consultation as inclusive as possible. So that's all I had, but very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Alison. I don't think there's any at this point in time, but if I could hand over to Councillor Ronan Brown, the portfolio holder for Council Homes and Landlord Services, to move the recommendations, please.
Yeah, say a few words before I move the recommendation. First of all, can I send my thanks to you, Alison, for the thorough job that you've done on this, and I've been quite heavily involved, thanks to yourself. And I'm glad to see that what we've discussed has actually been taken on board. So that's the first thing. I think that puts that confidence out there to the community and to the rest of the membership that actually the officers, we're working together and taking on board various things, and vice versa. I've listened to you with some of the valid comments that you've made that need to go into the new policy, etc. Again, good that we're going out to consult the whole community. And also this afternoon, I have seen the list that Alison sent across, and it's quite robust too. We're going to consult to all of the RSLs, all the concerned community groups that work with vulnerable people, etc., across the borough, and private landlords, etc. Again, yeah, there is some changes, but they're changes that are needed, because really, if you want social housing, it's really there for need. It should be there for people as a safety net, and we need to ensure that we have a good, adequate supply of that. And that's why also we'll be working with resident social landlords in the private rented sector to also be the offer for housing to meet the need and the demands of people in our borough. And we do have lots of pressures on it. And in addition to this, later on in the year, we'll hopefully then be looking at our own development programme of new council housing, but also working with registered social landlords to bring in a supply of other socially rented properties to ensure that people who actually need our homes, and linking with the county council around stuff as mental health supported housing and learning disability housing. But this is what will underpin all of that. And that's what I want to make clear, is that without a good, robust legal policy, we are open to criticism and open to challenge. And I look forward to seeing the comments that come back, and I know that the team will quite look at those robustly and ensure that anything that is adequate and meaningful will be taken into consideration. And finally, is that I'd just like to congratulate the team on the improvements that have been made in the housing options team. I had a contact this afternoon from Councillor Steadman to say that a recent case she's been kept me informed of, and how well that's actually been handled by the housing options team. So I think the changes that you're making is obviously having some impact on the ground, and I look forward to listening to those later on in the year. So going from there, Chair, I would like to move the recommendation 2.1 and 2.2. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also very pleased to second 2122, and also to congratulate Michelle, Alison and Councillor Brown. Really detailed introduction and a lot of information there given to us. I certainly look forward to the consultation going out. This is a 6-week period, I think. Yes, it is 6 weeks, and seeing how it comes back. And hopefully we can really engage with a huge amount of bodies and people. That would be great. Members, do you have anything to say at all? I'll look round. Alison?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment on the equality impact assessment, not really only to sort of offer support in terms of my role as Equalities. I'll be really interested to follow the progress of that and offer any support and get involved in that at any time. Just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that. And I don't believe anybody else wants to say anything. So in that case, those in favour of the recommendations, please raise their hands. Again, I believe that's unanimous, if that could be noted. So thank you very much. I'm not aware of any other business. I turn to the Chief Executive. He nods no. So all I can do is thank everyone who's supported this meeting, everyone who's listened to the meeting, and everyone who's taken part in the meeting. So safe trip home to those who have travelled. So thank you very much.